Okay, welcome to the penultimate session. This is the session where we get to hear first from the winning undergraduate team competition, which is sponsored by Starbucks. That's the first presentation. So they've already won. This is just their victory lap. Okay, so following that, we're going to have the three MBA. So there's no Q&A session after their presentation because they're done. So they're the experts, certified. But for the MBA case competitions, there'll be a presentation followed by Q&A from the judges because there'll be a judging for the MBA case competition. So without further ado, I want to introduce the winner of the Starbucks-sponsored undergraduate case competition. This was Team 6, Laura Keitlinger, Kara Eschbach, and Annie King. Take it away.
Thanks for joining us today. Like you said, my name is Kara Eschbach, and this is Laura Keitlinger and Annie King. And we're here to present to you our idea for Starbucks to go organic. The main crux of our plan is that Starbucks has a real commitment to social and environmental responsibility, but we must address the problem of supplying the organic demand and keeping the business profitable while doing that.
Since Howard Schultz took over Starbucks many years ago, the company has been committed to social responsibility. This has increased their brand equity and giving them a competitive advantage in the marketplace and making them more profitable. And now with demand for organic goods tripling every 4 to 5 years, it's clear that consumers are becoming more health conscious and more aware of animal welfare, and thus are beginning to demand organic goods. Therefore, it is crucial that Starbucks expand their organic dairy offerings to continue with their tradition of social responsibility. The important thing is that the milk carry the organic seal because it is USDA certified, thus proving that it is credible, and it is a recognizable seal for consumers. This is a known set of standards that both Starbucks and the consumer can rely on. We are also proposing that Starbucks develop its own ranking system that would reward organic farms for better animal welfare and environmental leadership. And this ranking system would be similar to the one used in the coffee industry, where Starbucks tries to buy from suppliers that are environmentally sensitive and socially equitable.
To show that Starbucks is aware of the increasing demand for organic products, we want to create an in-store organic experience. First of all, currently, Starbucks is charging an extra amount for organic substitutions in their coffee. However, we want to suggest that there is a free substitution in their current coffee offerings. Now, there is some concern that this might, to offset the loss in profit margin, we would like to also suggest that they increase their prices for their coffee by a reasonable amount so that it doesn't lose too much demand, but also makes up for that loss in profit margin. It was brought to our attention last night that Starbucks made headline news when their prices rise 5%. However, their first quarterly earnings was increased by 18.7%. Therefore, we have reason to believe that they have loyal customers. Also, on the other hand, by allowing the organic substitution to be free, we're hoping that we will bring in more organic conscious customers to their stores. Along with the free organic substitution, we would like to introduce a new organic line that consists of specialty drinks that you can only get with organic milk. By doing this, we can also have another means for showing our new ranking system by maybe putting it on our packages, showing that Starbucks is being socially responsible in not just the coffee industry, but also in the milk industry as well. Finally, we would like to roll this organic line out regionally, starting in the areas with the highest concentration of organic milk, such as in the United States, that would be the Northeast and California. Conveniently, these places are where organic milk farmers are in the United States, therefore cutting down on distribution costs at first. Also, we would like to roll them out not only domestically, but internationally as well, because we have found that there is an increase in demand for organic products internationally, and there are co-ops that we can partner with internationally as well.
We recognize with this increased demand for organic goods that there will be issues in the supply chain, not the least of which is that supply currently is already outpaced by demand by approximately 10%. And the reason being that there are simply not enough organic dairy farms in the United States to provide the necessary supply. It is costly and difficult to either start an organic farm or convert current dairy farms to organic, mostly because of the increased costs. Starting a dairy farm from scratch can cost $500,000, and converting a regular dairy farm to organic takes an average of 1 to 3 years and has increased costs both in labor and feed.
So as you can see, with those kinds of issues that we're facing, in order to get the supply that Starbucks is going to need, you must increase the volume of milk that they're getting. And in order to increase the volume of milk, you have to increase the volume of farms, the sheer number, in order to get the supply that they need for their products. We propose pairing with organic dairy farm co-ops, which provides a great vehicle for us in a number of ways. First of all, a lot of these co-ops already have development programs, so they're already doing some kind of subsidizing of farms to get them to convert from regular to organic. So you've got a lot of that already going on, and we can, instead of having to develop a competency of our own, carry it out through these people where this is what they do on a daily basis. We also would be providing the capital, but we would be doing this on an equity basis. And the main reason for this is so that Starbucks can actually assert some influence, so that we can do things like just saying, we expect you to go above and beyond just the organic dairy seal and want to meet these higher standards that we outline. That's the next point, that we would have the proprietary system, so putting emphasis on things other than just the organic seal, such as animal welfare, social welfare, environmental responsibility, things like that, to try and encourage these dairy farms to go above and beyond, much like they do with their coffee currently, where they have a system of ranking and say, we want to get most of our coffee supplies from these top suppliers, and kind of work your way down to meet the demand for your coffee. It's kind of the same thing carrying through into the organic milk. And we had kind of an example rating system of things that were important to us and that we feel would be important to organic consumers, and they would do things to expand upon that in order to meet their social responsibility as well as be very profitable as well. Thank you.
Okay, as I announced before, they've already won the competition, so we're not going to ask them any more questions. Just a quick remark, when the case was being developed, one of the things that was interesting is where the students would end up in the series of sort of outputs. And I must say there were very interesting things that were not anticipated when the case was written. So that's always a good sign. Creativity is good. We now have the, Emmanuel, are we set? I'm just trying to get all the queuing set up. Okay. At this point, we're going to move to the MBA case competition final round, which means there were 3 teams that were selected and are making their way to this round. The very first team is the team from Indiana University. And the way we're going to set it up is that each team gets to come and give its presentation. Teams that haven't presented don't get to hear them, so they don't get to hear judge questions. So please feel free to use the same questions if you want. It doesn't matter. It provides us, that provides you some comparison across the team. So if the teams are ready, and is this the first team? Okay. You're welcome.
Check, check. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Today, we are here to talk about WARMCO and the regulations that are heating up the AC market. My name is Keka, and together with my colleagues Kritika, Eric, and Shalini, we're going to help answer the questions of how do we face the challenges of new regulations in the marketplace. First, we have to talk about what are the drivers of sustainability. Typically, there are 3 drivers. Any question on sustainability can come from the consumer first. The consumer can demand greening of the supply chain and environmentally friendly products. Second, the industry itself can actually drive this question of sustainability. And third, of course, government regulation, which is why we're here today. In our industry, originally, volunteerism was the first path. That did not work. So we are here because the government has forced us with more stringent regulations to create a more environmentally friendly product. We're in a position to react to that change. We're in a very unique position, however, because as the distributor, not only do we have to meet the consumer demand and anticipate that, we also have to work with the manufacturer to ensure that whatever supply they give us will meet that consumer demand. We're in a very exciting position, though, because with new regulations, we have innovative technologies. We're able to be on the cusp of that innovation now with these new regulations. And that brings us to our 3 simple recommendations. We're here to answer the questions of who, how much, and how. Who do we get this new supply from? We're going to have a mix. We're going to rely on Holder and Bream. Holder to meet with their innovative technology, not only the current demand for SEER 10 and SEER 13, but any future demand that comes from any anticipated new regulation. Second, it's a sourcing question. How much and when do we buy? This is about the product mix and timing. Third, how? How do we get this? We look at inventory and distribution. In the short term, which is 9 months, we talk about a virtual warehouse, so we know exactly where the inventory is and how do we get it there in the most efficient manner to our customer. Also, the long term is part of the inventory and distribution strategies, and we're talking about a physical warehouse now, where we can keep the safety stock at an adequate level so that we can meet that consumer demand. In order to implement these recommendations, we need to look at who we are. WARMCO is a $1 billion company, the market leader in 6 states. We got there by having this entrepreneurial spirit. We're a decentralized model with 16 different distribution centers. The competition and the players in the market are threefold. We have the manufacturers, there are 24. The top 7 hold 97% of the market share. We're one of several hundred distributors, and there are more than 30,000 dealers, which leads us to pretty low margins. 1.1% at each step of the way, and a 2.2% margin overall. The dealers have the best value add here because not only do they offer the product, they also offer the service. In addition to those 2 things, of course, we look to the consumer and our customer. Those people are in the South and in the West, and they're in 2 parts of the market, the new residential market as well as the replacement market. While we think that the residential market for new units will be decreasing, the replacement market is 70% of our business, and that growth, we anticipate growth in that sector, will more than overshadow any loss we might face in the residential market. With that, I'll hand it over to Kritika, who will talk about why we're here to answer these questions in the first place.
Thanks, Keka. Good afternoon, everyone. While it is very important to just keep this background information in mind while looking at our recommendations, it's also important that we understand what brought us here. The change in regulatory environments. What was it before? Different states, different regulations, different requirements, different directions. And what is it going to be in January 2006, January 23rd, 2006? SEER 13 will be the minimum requirement, will be the minimum requirement that will have to be manufactured after January 23rd, 2006. And this brings us to this question of how do we deal with this change that is inevitable? We have 3 answers. The first, whom do we source from? We've looked at it from a long-term and a short-term perspective. The second, how much do we source? Again, a long-term and a short-term perspective to it. And the third, what do we do to make us more sustainable than what we are today? because changes in regulations are inevitable. The first question, whom do we source from? Do we go with holders who seems to have the advanced technology within the SEER 13 product, or with Breams, who seems to have sorted out all those supplier issues and is in a better position to serve our demands? Here's what we suggest. Breams will be our short-term manufacturing partner to serve the demand for the next 9 months, which we believe will be very dynamic. And Holder, owing to the advanced technology products, will be our long-term partner. That brings us to the second question of how much. And there's the numbers for you. 510,000 is what we predict we will have to source, and this is something that we came up with after forecasting the demand. Here's the interesting point. Even though SEER 10 is in the phasing out changes, SEER 10 is still 42% of our product mix. The reason is, just like the engine business, while SEER 10 phases out, we anticipate a surge in demand and followed by a gradual buildup of SEER 13 requirements. We believe this product mix will put us in a good position to make sure that we capitalize on that surge in demand of SEER 10 and also make sure that we get a foothold in the growing SEER 13 market. Here's what the numbers look like for the next 5 years. Even though the new housing market is poised to decline at a rate of 4%, the replacement market, which is 70% of the air conditioning business, is poised to grow at 6%. This, we believe, will help us achieve those numbers in the long term. Thank you. And here's a snapshot of the financials for 2006. We believe that with the product mix that we proposed, we will be in a position to achieve a revenue growth of 4.7%. So those are the two questions. Whom do we source from, and how much do we source? There's a third question. What will be our long-term strategy? And how will we go about in making sure that we adapt ourselves to the changing regulatory requirements? For this, I would like to now hand it over to my teammate, Eric, to answer those questions. Thank you.
So one of the fundamental questions coming down for Warmco is going to be the distribution. Through a series of acquisitions, the company has grown dramatically, but has also become very decentralized in its operations. With the 16 different regions, it also creates some new distribution issues with the SEER 13 standard, resulting from potentially the doubling in size that will impact in both transportation networks and warehousing. So the first fundamental piece that we have suggested is a pooling of the warehousing virtually, so that different regions can see what inventory is where versus all 16 regions advancing their inventory. Consequently, we've also developed for the long term a model that we would like the company to look at that can determine where should centralized distribution go. We feel that centralized distribution will be an advantage in the long term so that safety stocks can be pooled, so that transportation can be reduced overall. With rising gas prices and engine prices, et cetera, going on, we don't feel that just buying 16 new transportation networks and 16 new warehouses is the most effective way of spending the money. So this model first identifies where can Warmco start to place its distribution networks to minimize transportation on the whole. It takes in fundamentally minimizing overall transportation distance combined with how much inventory will go in and out of that warehouse. Conversely, though, there is a cost to associate with this. So we have another model that does start to look at what is the cost of going into each of these. Obviously, these are initial tools that you can look at, but still must be weighed fundamentally against is it any better than what we have now with a very decentralized network. There are other scorecards that will need to be put in place, but these tools start to allow you to do that. So we've given you 3 recommendations on who do you source from, how much do you buy and when, and is decentralization or centralization there? We understand, however, that there are fundamental risks that you're going to have to follow. We've identified the risks in 3 primary areas. One in sourcing, the second one in inventory, and the third in terms of distribution. In sourcing, one of the fundamental issues with this is that The SEER 13 raw materials vendors might not be able to meet demand because there is a smaller number or a limited number of sourcers. However, this is truly up to the carriers and the holders of the world to have to get their supply base in line. However, we need to be able to partner with those same vendors by giving them better forecasts. We suggest a rolling 6-month type forecast broken down by weeks and getting that to them weekly to show changes in demand up and down. Additionally, inventory. Right now we are predicting that there is potentially a build-in inventory that is going to occur. We feel, however, that this is a short-term growth, again related to the fact that the company must meet SEER 10 and SEER 13 demand. However, our prediction is that as SEER 10 starts to increase, you will experience an initial rise up. However, as that starts to dramatically fall off, because the entire market will experience the same piece, you will start to see SEER 13 demand rise to replace that. And finally, with distribution, centralize or decentralize. We've given you 2 models that we feel you can work with to initially answer this question, to look at both location and at costs of this. There's still some company cultural issues that will need to be looked at, but this is